Hey guys, it's Mr. Tibadoom. I am here sitting in my Tiba room and just looking at my Tiba math. Not math, language arts, social studies, one of those. It doesn't rhyme. Anyway, education and land. So last week we talked about how African Americans were gaining a voice, things were looking good, everything was awesome, and freed black folks were doing okay, and we ended slavery and racism forever. Whoops. So that last part's not going to be true, unfortunately. Education and land, basically, we're going to see that sharecropping is going to be a big deal. When the radical Republicans fail, particularly because of Johnson, fail to really help to get to break up big plantations and give some of that land to the slaves that worked that plantation. So they get some land, okay? There's a fair amount of land that's happening with the Freedmen's Bureau, but it's not enough. They don't get enough land to really make a living. And Sherman had before promised 40 acres and a mule to the people he freed, except that was undone by Johnson. And so what we see is that the folks who are freed do not have enough opportunity to really make an honest go. And those who do struggle and make it work, they're going to come into some pretty severe obstacles in white folks who are just straight up standing in their way. We do see some examples of exceptionalism and examples of folks doing well. So we see Howard University, a historically black college, but we also see that a lot of these black folks do not have enough. And so what they have to do is they have to borrow land from white folks and work on that land and then essentially rent that land out. This is called sharecropping. And honestly, it's just a step sideways from slavery. In many ways, the white folks get a better deal because they no longer have to worry about sending in an overseer to watch the black folks, and the black folks are trying to earn for themselves. If they make extra, they get to keep it. But the white folks now have a little bit a different sort of power over the black folks in a lot of these families, and we see that it's just slavery by a different name, but it's still better for the black folks because they can leave to some extent. Their sharecropping would often be under contract, and so they were stuck there for that contract. And sometimes they'd be kicked off even after they'd done huge improvements to the land. So they still got messed up by that. And another way of calling this was black peonage. Being a peon is basically an underling. Okay, it's they talk about it as an economic slavery. In the North, we'll talk about wage slavery. In the South, we'll talk about sharecropping. And both of these are actually kind of true for black folks and white folks. Okay, there were white sharecroppers. There's definitely white folks in the North who are dealing with wage slavery. We talk about wage slavery now, where you make just enough money to live, but not enough money to advance, and not enough money to do anything. Like where you have to work two jobs just to pay your rent. Okay, that would be a form of wage slavery, where the wages are so low you can just barely exist, is all. So not only do we see sharecropping, but we see straight up resistance, okay? The Ku Klux Klan begins. The Ku Klux Klan is actually going to be very small in the beginning. They're going to have a huge resurgence in the 1920s. Originally in 1867, they have some stuff that they do, but it's not until the 1920s that they really become the thing that we know of them today. And they were huge. Like governors and sheriffs and people of power would straight up talk about being a Klansman. Like they were not. It was not something they were afraid of talking about. Okay, the Klansmen had power. It was a secret society, but it was not that secret. Everyone knew that the governor or the mayor or the sheriff or the cops or the police, people knew that they were in it. And they have a huge amount of power, and they specifically threaten with violence and sometimes actively kill black folks. But they tell black people that if you're going to vote, we're going to kill you, or we're going to do some pretty terrible things to you, okay? They had a specific type of hanging that they did, lynching, which only recently was even considered a hate crime. It was always considered a crime, right? You killed them. But we used to, and it was up until like 2 years ago, most states did not consider it a hate crime, even though the specific type of lynching was specifically that white folks were doing to black folks. It was not considered a specific race crime, even though everyone knew it was. So that's really frustrating. One of the funny things about this is in the 1940s, the Ku Klux Klan is going to get a pretty big smackdown. And they're going to get it from the most unlikely of places. They're going to get it from Superman. Clark Kent is going to destroy the Ku Klux Klan. Straight up. And there was a radio play about Superman. And it was very popular. Everyone loved it. Superman was great. And this is the golden age of Superman. And this guy, who is white dude, who is super frustrated with the Ku Klux Klan, realizes that they are everywhere, decides to infiltrate them. He goes, infiltrates the KKK, learns all of their secret salutes and handshakes and different words they use, and he realizes this is dumb. Like, not just dumb in that racism is dumb. Like, the handshakes, the secret words, the stuff they do, all of their weird rituals is like stuff that a kid would make. It was silly. It was so stupid. And so he takes all of that stuff, brings it to the Superman radio play, and Superman on live radio goes and, as Clark Kent, infiltrates the KKK and actively on air talks about all of the secret society stuff that the Ku Klux Klan did. And everyone realizes, wow, that's stupid. This is really stupid. These guys are idiots. And when that veil, that mystery was taken off, not only did Superman beat the crap out of them on the air verbally, but in real life, Ku Klux Klan membership dropped. It went from really, really high, huge percent of people doing it, to suddenly a lot of people were like, yeah, this is kind of childish. I don't want to be a part of this. And the Ku Klux Klan actually had fewer members as a result of Superman fighting the Ku Klux Klan. It's a great story to look into. And I wish I knew the guy's name off the top of my head, because he did some really good work with that. But unfortunately, the Ku Klux Klan continues to have a reign of terror. Not so much now. I mean, they're still active. Ku Klux Klan actually had a huge footprint in Oregon. Oregon was founded by a lot of people who are white supremacists. So we have that history that we have to deal with. Beaverton was specifically founded by members of the Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacists, because when integration was happening in Portland and you had to have integrated schools, Beaverton became its own city so that they would not have to mix the white folks who lived in Beaverton with the black folks who lived in Portland. Okay, so Beaverton became its own city specifically due to racist reasons. Okay, so Oregon's got a really long history of this, and it's important to remember that and think about that, because you can't change it if you don't know where you're at, right? So it's not necessarily a shame. Like, I'm not ashamed to be an Oregonian, but it's like a map. You need to know where you're at so you can know how to get out or get to where you want to go. And so we need to know all of the racist institutions that surround us, or the issues that surround us. Not all institutions are racist or whatnot, but there definitely are some issues. But we need to understand them, talk about them, and then move past them. That's my thought. So here we see that the radical Republicans are trying really hard to fight against some of these racist attitudes, but they're coming up into a lot of difficulty, specifically because Johnson gave so many people their power back. All the folks who had been part of the Confederacy, most of them got their jobs back, and as such, they were able to use that power to continue to oppress black folks. Grant's presidency, I love Grant. He is not a good president, one of the worst, but I love him. I think he tried really hard. He was just not, that was just not his jam. He really tried to genuinely help black folks in America. He really wanted Reconstruction to work. And he just was not charismatic. He was absolutely an introvert. He absolutely did not want the spotlight. He tried, though, and it just did not. He was going up against a lot of people's prejudices, and he just was not the man for the job. Even though his spirit was willing, but he just wasn't able to make the inroads. But I respect the heck out of him. We see the radical Republicans are still trying. Here's one of the funny things that we'll talk about when we talk about the election of 1876. Liberal Republicans, okay, this is a group that breaks away as the Republican Party is splitting. There's radical Republicans and there's liberal Republicans, okay? The liberal Republicans, they believe in a small government and free trade, end to Reconstruction, okay? So they were what we would call today conservatives, okay? The liberal Republicans were conservative. The radical Republicans were liberal, okay? That's using today's language. The thing is liberal, Republican, these words change their meaning so much as attitudes of the time change. So it's really hard to talk about, who is what when. This Democrat here, Tilden, nothing to do with Democrats today. Would absolutely hate the Democratic Party today. I don't think any of these guys would recognize any of the political parties. They've changed so much. So really don't try to say that, don't try to connect these guys to the stuff today. And in fact, I hate it when anyone does that because so much of the stuff has changed. If you talk about the Republican Party, the GOP, as being the party of Lincoln, well, okay, technically, maybe, but things have changed so much that it's really hard to make that actual argument other than name, right? Like, these liberal Republicans, you wouldn't call any Republican today liberal, right? They would not like that. They generally are on the other side. But if you ask the Republicans today if they want small government, yeah, they're probably down for that. So the names change so much. So just be careful about that. We have the election of 1876 is probably one of the most important elections that we've had. And I know we talk about elections today being super important, but boy golly, this one sucked. Hayes wins through a deal that was made. This compromise. Tilden was literally, and it doesn't tell you as much here, you kind of have to guess for this question, but I'm going to help you. Tilden wins by Tilden was one single electoral vote away. He was very likely going to win and become president, and then the Democrat would have won. And again, Democrat is in this case, the more racist of the two, though Hayes was probably still pretty racist because he was not a radical Republican. There's not a person like we would expect today. These guys are much more folks of their times. In any case, Tilden was close to winning. They make a deal where Hayes is going to become president, but they give up on Reconstruction. This is the death of the Reconstruction, where they stop trying to force the South to essentially not be a-holes, not be jerks about how racist they were to black folks. And it's a hands-off from here on out. And spoiler alert, things are going to get really bad for black folks in the South. Slavery's not going to come back, but also it's definitely coming back. because black folk, what the white folks in the South are going to realize is that the more black people they jail, if you're convicted of a felony or if you're in jail, they can make you work for free, i.e. slavery. So they start just rounding up black people and putting on sham trials and throwing them in jail for nothing at all. And so things are not going to go well in that regard. And unfortunately, that is the downer note that this book ends on. So there's that. The hopeful good news is that the civil rights is coming. 100 years later. Geez, sorry guys. I love America, but we be slow on some stuff. And even after civil rights, we still have issues. The time to have fixed it was then. The time to have fixed it was right after. That's when we should have been focused on healing. We can still, it's never too late, but we just got to realize that people are people, and the color of your skin is not should not be what defines us. And black culture and white culture are not all that different. There's differences for sure. Like, you shouldn't ignore race, but anyway. That's it, guys. Have a good one. Be kind to one another. Peace.